You can't tell, but I can read all the words on it. So there is a common wisdom that suggests that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. And honestly, I've often felt that way in my life, but as so many business leaders and champions of industry have already pointed out and explained, if you want something done the way you want something done, then you're probably going to be best to do it yourself. Otherwise, you're better off delegating. Say, those who know most about running a business, you can't do everything yourself. And if you're really wanting to accomplish something great, you're going to need others to help you along the way. In 2019, Inc. magazine ran an article that was titled, "If You Want Something Done Right, Do It Yourself, and Other Lies That Keep You From Being Successful." The phrase, "if you want something done right, do it yourself," is a quote that honestly is attributed to Napoleon. So, that's to teach you that if you are a warmonger, a tyrant, or a murderer, that might be the best approach. However, for the rest of us, it's probably not. Even in this week's Parsha, God asks Moses for help. He says in verse 2 of chapter 31, "Nikom nikmat b'nei Yisrael meit hamidyanim, acher te'asef el amecha." God says to Moses, go out and avenge the Israelites on the people of Midian. That is going to be your last great act. To do something on behalf of your brothers and sisters, the people of Israel, and that is to avenge them by wreaking a war on the Midianites. And just to remind you of the context of what's going on amongst this request that God has made of Moses. Miriam has died. Aaron has died. Moses has hit the rock and told he's not going to go into the land of Israel. He's then told to go up the mountain and look out to see the land he's not going to inhabit, and then develop a military strategy for conquering that land. Again, the land he would never set foot in. And then God says to Moses, do me a favor and avenge the Israelite people by wiping out the Midian. The same people that his father-in-law came from. Can you imagine the audacity of God to make this request of Moses? And it turns out that the request wasn't even for Moses, because in the very next verse it says, "Hitzlichu meitchem anashim letzava," gather up these people in order to create an army, "Viyu al hamidyan latet nikmat Adonai b'Midian." That Moses was to gather this army together in order to avenge God. It wasn't even for the Jewish people. God actually changes mid-course and says, don't do it for the people, do it for me. Can you imagine what Moses must have thought when God makes this request of him? Regardless of who the fight was for, whether it was for the Israelites or for God, it certainly wasn't for Moses. Just parenthetically, no one ever goes to battle for Moses. Yochanan Muffs, a great professor at the seminary, in a wonderful book entitled Love and Joy, which is about the excruciating place that Moses inhabits by standing in the breach between the Jewish people and God continuously. We recognize that no one ever goes to battle for Moses. He explains every time that there is a disagreement between God and the Jewish people, or between the Jewish people and God, Moses stands in the middle and he negotiates a peace. God wants to kill the Jewish people because they build a golden calf. Moses prevents it. The Jewish people want to go back to Egypt and rather be subservient to Pharaoh. Moses negotiates their continued journey. Moses convinces the Jewish people continuously to soldier on, while Moses continues to convince God to forgive. Time and time again, Moses counsels these two groups back together. Moses defends the Jewish people. Moses calms God down. It's like a broken record. And each time it starts to skip, Moses steps in and moves the arm so that once again there remains a harmonious conclusion. The only thing that Moses ever really wanted was to enter the land of Israel. And not a single person comes to his defense. None to his aid, none to his support. His plea for his sentence to be commuted goes unanswered. No one says a word. I'm incredulous of this request by God for him to lead the people into one more battle. And it's not even a battle for survival. This is a battle for the sake of revenge. It's not about conquering a land. It's a war of vengeance. And Moses feels no compulsion. Yet again, he's done what he is told. Yet again, he does what God tells him to. Moses stands to post and carries out his orders. All the while, I can't help but think of the fact that no one steps up for him. We see his selfless response time and time again, even though no one's going to come to his own defense. It's actually a comment by the Ramban, by Nachmanides, that sparked such a deep sense of pain for Moses. When Ramban writes, Nigzar al Moshe Rabbeinu shelo yavor al Yarden, on this very verse on which God tells Moses to seek revenge on the Midianites, Ramban says that God instructs him that he'll never go into the land of Israel, that he'll never cross the Jordan. Aval me'ever layarden asa kol hamitzvah sheYisrael. Rather, that from this side, he still ought to observe every mitzvah, every command that he has gotten, that he has received by God. Ramban points out that he's standing on the other side of the Jordan. And he's never going to cross the Jordan into the land of Israel. Ramban takes note of the geography as if to cry out to the Jewish people, Moses has done so much for you and will never go in. Maybe this is just an ungrateful group of children of slaves who simply are unacquainted with their history of Moses' personal sacrifice. But even that generous reading paints a picture of a people who is just unprepared to go to battle for anyone but themselves. So Moses makes one more subtle plea. In the next chapter, Moses is dividing up the land of Israel, and 2.5 tribes, Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Menashe, say they don't want to go into the land of Israel, that they're content to live on this side of the Jordan and graze their cattle there. There's ample food for them on this side of the Jordan. And Moses is incredulous. And he says to the 2.5 tribes, he says, Vayomer Moshe legad v'livnei Ruvain achichem yavo lemilchama v'atem tishvu po. You're going to let your brothers and sisters go into the land of Israel to conquer that land, and you're going to sit here? As if to say you have to stand with somebody. You can't just decide that you don't want to do it and let your brothers fight their own battles. Moses is saying to these 2.5 tribes that the last act I do before I die really isn't going to be about a war of revenge. It's going to be about the lesson of making peace with your brothers and sisters, not war with others. Moses, long before Alexander Hamilton was saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Moses may be teaching us the most significant lesson of his life, and that is, even if you have nothing to gain for yourself, you have to be willing to fight for others. Even if you'll reap no personal benefit or gain, you have to stand for something. He says to his fellow country people, in the end, I will go to my grave. You won't even know where it is. You'll never come to visit. But you will have each other, so make sure you stand up for each other. Just about a week and a half ago, a pro football player, a guy named Deshaun Jackson, made some ugly anti-Semitic statement. And he felt emboldened to make those statements because we live in a world now in which anti-Semitism is on the rise. The ADL reports that 2019 was the year of the highest rate of anti-Semitism in recent memory. But it's the way that Julian Edelman, another football player, responded that gives me hope. Julian Edelman is a wide receiver for the New England Patriots, and he's also Jewish. And he invited this Philadelphia Eagle wide receiver, Deshaun Jackson, to visit with him the United States Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. after Deshaun Jackson's anti-Semitic rant. And he said as follows, I have seen Deshaun play in his career, making outstanding football plays. We've communicated over social media. I've got nothing but respect for his game. I know he said some ugly things, but I do see an opportunity to have a conversation. Edelman said in an Instagram video posted last Thursday. He said, I'm proud of my Jewish heritage. And for me, it's not just about religion, it's about community and culture as well. He added, I am unusual because I didn't identify as Jewish until later in my life. Whenever I encountered hatred, it never really felt like it was aimed at me, he said. It was only after I was part of this community that I learned how destructive hate is. Anti-Semitism is one of the oldest forms of hatred. It's rooted in ignorance and fear. Look, we can't all be pro athletes with a huge platform like Julian Edelman. In fact, it's unique to be a Jewish pro athlete at all. But fighting anti-Semitism might be where we decide to put our energies. You can make a difference in anything you want in the world, even if it's not going to benefit you personally. You pick your battle, you pick your issue, and you can make a difference even if it won't affect you. But everyone can stand up and do their part. And so I say again, if you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. And I implore you this Shabbat, find your voice and stand for something. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf, page 184. Please rise.